Hi, this is Stephanie Lotvin of Tellybean Knits, and today I'm going to show you how to place the thumb stitches for your right hand mitten on hold and how to work the palm transition round from your pattern. I have just completed the thumb gusset and cuff portion of my right mitten. You can see that this is my right hand mitten because the thumb stitches are starting to slant to the right, and so if you follow this line, it slants off to the right, and that is how I know that I have been working my right hand mitten and I'm ready to place those thumb stitches on hold. You can see I have very full needles at the moment, and so I am ready to get those stitches off of my needles. For this tutorial, you are going to need a bit of scrap yarn and a tapestry needle so that you have the ability to put those thumb stitches on hold, and then I'll show you how to continue working the transition round for the palm. All right, just grab your tapestry needle. You can see here I've just completed a round. This is my beginning of the round marker, and because my stitches there are so many stitches on my needles, and my needles are so full, it likes to jump off the needles right here. So if you find it easier, you can just set that to the side for a moment while we do this first portion of the tutorial. So I'm going to insert my tapestry needle into the stitches indicated in my pattern that need to be slipped. For me, I need to slip the first 23 stitches on my needles in order to place my right thumb stitches on hold. I'm going to insert my tapestry needle purlwise into those stitches so that I don't change the orientation of any of those stitches. So I'll just insert into those first 23 stitches into my soon to be held thumb stitches and slip those onto my scrap yarn. The easiest way to tell that these are your thumb stitches is by looking at the colorwork motif on your mitten. So on my mitten, the thumb stitches are shown in these tiny little vertical stripes. I'm going to go ahead and pull that scrap yarn through. My scrap yarn is just long enough that I can tie this off easily and give myself some space so that those stitches have the ability to spread out while I work, but also once I get a little farther into my palm, it'll give me the ability to actually try my mitten on. I'm going to flip that scrap yarn back to the inside of my work so that it is out of the way. Now the stitches that are not thumb stitches, you can see they're a different motif. These are the stitches the motif that I'll be carrying into the palm. They look like little flowers or even little snowflakes depending on the colors that you are working your mitten in. Now is the time that if you removed that stitch marker, your beginning of the round stitch marker, in order to place those thumb stitches on hold, you should go ahead and pop that back on. For your palm transition round, you are going to need your main color, which for me is this light blue color, and you're going to need your CC3, your contrasting color 3, which for me is white. Now, it's probably useful for these first two stitches, which you need to cast on, to just hold on to your main color. You don't need to fight yourself by holding more than one yarn at a time. I'm just going to scoop my stitches on my right hand needle a little closer to the end of my right hand needle, and now I'm going to cast on 2 stitches using the backwards loop cast on. So I'm just going to place 2 stitches onto my needle. So you can see I've my beginning of the round marker, and then I've cast on 2 stitches using the backward loop. And now I'm going to bring my left hand needle closer, and I'm going to work the first stitch on my left hand needle using CC3, which for me is the white. Now, in order to reduce the gap here, I'm actually going to give that a little tug. I don't want it to be so tight that I'm not going to be able to spread those stitches out later. However, when I'm working across this gap, which will be the gap that I need to close later when I am working my thumb stitches and working the thumb chart. I don't want that gap to be so enormous that I'm having to do a lot of extra work to close any holes later in my mitten. And so if you can reduce that gap by giving that a little tug, and I'll just show you what my strand of CC3 looks like back here. It's not super long and it's not super short. I've given it enough slack so that it can stretch across those stitches. It's coming from 2 rounds below and stretching across 3 stitches as well. That will help you later when you're working with your thumb stitches. So I'm just going to continue to work my transition round, and in this transition round, I'm also going to make sure that I keep good tension on the main color when I work my next main color stitch. So I have my 2 backwards loop cast on stitches. I've worked 1 stitch in CC3. I'm keeping tension on that stitch. And now I'm going to keep some extra tension on my first main color stitch, my MC stitch. And I'm going to do that for at least 3 more stitches. I'm going to keep a little extra tension that I wouldn't normally keep in my stitches to help close that gap. You can see it wants to have a kind of gap here, and some gapping is fine, but you want to close that as much as you can. And then I'm just going to follow my chart and work in pattern around my palm transition round until I come back to my beginning of the round marker. Make sure you're glancing at your motif to see that your new stitches that you're adding to your palm are lining up with the motif that you have already established in your mitten when you were working the thumb gusset and cuff. If there is a place where you could easily get off in your motif, this is probably the place that you would do it, because those transitions are always the easiest place to get knocked off course. So giving yourself a little grace in this round and the opportunity to just glance down at your knitting. Take it slow in this round and make sure that everything is set and established, because the palm section is really fun and relaxing as long as you make sure that that transition round is established well. I'm coming back to the beginning of my round, and you can see there is some gapping, and that's okay. That's because as your backwards loop cast on stitches slip past the needle, if you're using a small circumference needle, I'm using a 9-inch circumference needle, that can change the tension of those stitches, and that tension will change and even out as you move farther into your palm. But there will still be some natural gapping there, which you can work with and deal with, both whenever you are establishing your thumb stitches and when you are weaving in ends, and finally when you're blocking. So I've come back to the beginning of the round, and I'm just going to slip my beginning of the round marker. And I just want to show you what this looks like so far. Right now, so this is my right hand mitten. You can see I have that right hand slant, I have my thumb stitches placed on hold, and I have all of my palm stitches on my needle so that I can continue to work in the round and work the palm of my mitten. I hope that you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you so much for watching.